Ali from Adastra HR. Thank you for joining us today. Can you just give us a little bit of background about you and what your company does?
Yeah, no, I'd love to, Michelle. Adastra HR is an HR employment support consultancy in Horsham. It's a team of us that decided to support small businesses when you don't need HR in-house all the time. And what that became really apparent to us is it's not just about HR, it's about health and safety, it's about payroll, it's about GDPR, all those things that everybody swears about. And actually you just need experts at the end of the phone. I like to call us the Nanny McPhee of HR. When you need us, we're there. When you don't need us, we're in the background helping everybody to be supported, because you don't deal with staffing issues every day, and just really be an extended part of the team as if we're in the room next door. And we're based in the middle of Horsham. We've got a great, small but perfectly formed team of HR, health and safety, payroll and legal experts. And we're about adding a bit of heart and soul to business, because it's hard enough running a business without having to worry about what does the law say.
I love that Nanny McPhee analogy.
Oh, yeah,
That's
absolutely,
great.
Absolutely. Because again, it's about kind of being, we call ourselves the Adastra Angels, a bit of fun, but it's about that, clients that say to us, please just hold my hand through this staffing situation or what it might be. And that's all they need sometimes, or just a sounding board.
So I can imagine it must be quite a strange time at the moment. We're in very unusual circumstances. And we've got business owners kind of trying to find their way with furloughed staff and bringing staff back to work now. So what are some of the things they need to think about at the moment?
Well, it's amazing, isn't it? I mean, who'd ever heard of furlough before?
Yes.
3 months ago, everybody is, busy, crazy busy running their businesses, dealing with everything they normally have to deal with. And then suddenly, wow, Covid-19 hits. And the term furlough, never heard of.
No.
So actually, every HR person, every health and safety person, every payroll person is saying, wow, now we need to really work this out as well. So we've been kind of working around the clock with clients, and they're all small businesses. They're all people that could have 2-3 employees, right up to 200-400, and a lot of people then don't have that team in-house to help them. So what we've found is it's really been a case of working through with the companies how they respond to COVID. And the first part of it is, what do we do now that we're in this unprecedented time? We're in an unknown territory. We've never had this in a lot of our lifetimes. And so how do you deal with that as your business, as well as keep your business running? And I think what we've then found, it's from an HR perspective, is what does furlough leave mean? How do we cope with the fact that we've got a decline in revenue? How do we deal with the fact that we don't have suddenly orders coming through the door? And how do we pay our staff, and how do we keep the business afloat?
Yes.
And we're dealing with a lot of uncertainty, a lot of emotion, a lot of stress for business owners, people that just saying, I don't know which way to turn. And the big part of that in what HR should be is your business partner, someone to actually say, don't worry, we've got your back, we're going to help you through it. And part of that's been hard because we've actually been learning as we've gone as well. We've between us got probably collective 25 years of HR experience. But
COVID's something completely different for you.
And then actually furlough leave, what does that mean? The Corona Job Retention Scheme, the HMRC claims, what does that mean for staff if I don't need them all? And a big part of that support has been saying, okay, let's just take a breath, let's just stop and say, let's get your staff onto furlough leave if you don't need them. Let's work out how many people you do need, and then let's work out if we rotate them, because everyone's gone through a period of uncertainty where they've suddenly said, I haven't got any work to do, but my colleagues have, and I'm now at home on furlough leave and I want to help, but I can't. So we've had a whole, a huge amount of issues, not only around the businesses, but around mental health issues, around the fears and concerns about what happens next. And for MDs of companies sitting there thinking, right, I've got to have a checklist now, what do I do? And the people, the money, all those processes, how do I deal with it? And that's really been where we've gone into a hand-holding exercise of saying, right, what do you need? When do you need it? And also really get them thinking about what do you need longer term, because we can deal with the immediate, we can deal with contractual letters and saying let's get you on furlough leave, because that's a pay variation, and a lot of people don't realise you have to get staff to agree to that. Once they're on furlough leave and you're managing your business and trying to keep the home fires burning, you're then saying, right, how do I come out to the other side of this and make sure that we're in a shape where the company can survive? And if it's got to be on lesser numbers of staff for a period of time, how do we maximise the benefits of that with furlough funding? I mean, the government scheme's been fantastic, but again, people need to know how to access it and how to make sure that overall employment law still applies. So how do you make sure you're legally compliant and you're not doing anything wrong around their contracts, and actually the staff are communicated with while they're at home or they're working at home? And of course, when you're working at home, it adds a whole other issue of, of how are people feeling as well as working. But of course, they're getting up in the morning, they're going to their home working desk. You're trying to keep them connected with others in the team. I mean, I don't know about you, Zoom calls have become the norm.
They've gone through the roof.
Haven't they just? I think the record we've had, I think I had 16 back-to-back hour-long Zoom calls in one day.
Crikey.
The osteopath has been very, very important to me at that point. But for every employee working at home, they don't have a workstation necessarily. So it's all those things, anything that affects people, of course, just as important as affecting the numbers, is how do you deal with that, but also how do you maximise the funding that's available from the furlough leave and the support from the government. And that's been a big part of how we've supported clients on that as well over the last 3 months, and how we'll carry on planning that in the future, because as we go through to the end of October, we've got a lot of opportunity to work with companies and help them shape the business. Because what is the new normal going to look like? It's going to be very different with home working and office working and business demands.
And I assume that there's business owners that are having to look at employees' contracts now as well, and how they're written.
Absolutely. And I think it's a combination of things. How do you make the most of the funding available? And that's the first part, because if companies are going to have to change working hours, maybe make use of short time working once the end of October is reached, how do you actually adapt people's hours and their pay? And how do you deal with, hopefully, what we'll see as an increase again in revenue coming in? And how do you just be flexible with your workforce, with your team? Well, again, you've got 1 or 2 people or 100 people. Employment law is important, but you've got a commercial side there that you have to be able to say, I need to keep the business increasing resources as we increase the business again. And how do we do that? So contracts really important. And again, how do you get the most out of those opportunities? And how do you make sure that as MDs of businesses, you're legally compliant and protected? And the protection is a big part of that as well.
So it sounds as though you've got lots of things to keep you busy, a whole raft of different requirements for business owners to look at.
It is. And I think because everything that involves people involve what we do. So it could be something in terms of looking at their contracts, making sure they've got the right letters in place that mean that you can go ahead and process your payroll at the end of the month and claim that furlough grant. Do you have to consider making some changes and maybe consulting with staff and looking at maybe changing the number of members of staff that you have? What are the costs associated? I mean, we don't like to really think about redundancy, but ultimately businesses are going to have to, in some shapes. We have a lot of clients in the travel industry and they've been hit massively. We've got clients in hospitality and restaurants and bars. And so that has a knock-on effect to them reopening. What are the health and safety implications, and how does that impact the employees and their contracts? And then payroll in itself is a minefield. How do we make sure that the owners get the most out of that funding through their payroll? And that's, again, why we kind of offer it all as a one-stop shop. If you come to us with a situation, we'll work through all of that with the person, with the MD or with the employee. And as I said, it's a bit like saying, imagine we're in the room next door, the staff can talk to us if their boss doesn't know the answer, or the boss wants to enable us to actually be that support, even go in once social distancing allows, or even join some Zoom calls with teams and say, let's just talk about what you're worried about.
Yes, because I would think it works the other way as well, that you've got employees talking to business owners and saying, actually, I have these concerns and I need to talk about this. And then they need advice on that element as well. Well,
imagine how many working mums and dads are at home at the moment, and we've seen loads of stuff on Facebook and on LinkedIn and on poor parents trying to do work and manage the kids. I mean, suddenly they've gone from being, full-time workers and employees to full-time teachers.
Yes.
And the stress levels on that are unbelievable. But that's actually a really good opportunity now for companies to think differently. In the past, maybe they've said, we want everybody working in the office. We don't encourage home working, there. But actually now, well, my team, we've got 3 out of 7 of our team have school-age children. and they won't be able to come back and work in the office until the kids are back into school in September. But if you can find the balance,
Yes.
you can actually get more out of people by helping them to manage the homeschooling, manage the fact, I mean, how many people now have seen their kids bounce onto the screen on Zoom calls?
I think everybody's had that, yeah.
Just bring them all in. It's when you see suddenly the dog comes running into the bedroom when you're on that call, or the kiddie comes in their onesie going, Mum, my iPad's not working. At the end of the day, hey, you know, everyone's human and everyone's trying to survive and everyone's trying to help each other. And that, I think, is what COVID will have done. It will have raised the awareness around, you know, people are your best assets. Help them, you'll get more out of them because you're helping them as well. And actually, you probably save some less on rent if you decide you're going to let more people work at home, you know, and be flexible. You might end up needing less office space at the point you come back.
There's some real opportunities there.
Yeah, but also again, you know, from a health and safety perspective, you're dealing with physical and mental health and well-being. So people are working at home. You know, have you done a risk assessment for them sitting at their breakfast bar in the kitchen? If they're going to come back into the office, have you done a realistic assessment? You don't have to start putting up perspex screens. You just make sure that everybody is safe, because COVID-19 is now reported as a workplace disease. So your responsibilities as an employer, whether it's 1 or 100, you need to make sure the environment's safe. And part of that becomes, right, when they're coming back to work, how do you manage that? If you've made the office as safe as possible, you might get some resistance on how they feel about coming back into the office.
Yes.
And that's another part of supporting the staff. And if you encourage them with that and you reassure them that you've got their interests, their best interests at heart, part of it, as you say, could be because people are trying to deal with other pressures. And actually, at the end of the day, if you work with your team, you'll get far more out of them. And if they're worried, we just talk to them.
Yes.
That's what it's all about.
So what would be your top tips for people to take away at the moment?
I think top tips for owners of businesses is we need to plan.
Yeah.
Think about that, because right now you're never going to have a better opportunity to plan. You're never going to have an opportunity where you've got government funding still running until the end of October. And beyond that, there's lots of flexibility and options. So don't put off decisions that you might think I need to wait until November, because actually now is the best time to decide, what does my business look like? What's the end goal? How do I get it back to where it needs to be? And then let's do some planning and some talking, because the more you plan now, the more you can put it all into place, get people back to work, get them into an environment which works for your business, get everybody to hit the ground running again. And hopefully, as we start to see lockdown easing, we will then see everybody will be in a really good shape to run their businesses, reopen the doors, and be able to say, we got through this, and we got through it all as a team.
Yes. I think that's a really lovely note, that we got through it as a team. That's fantastic. Thank you ever so much for joining us today. It's been really interesting.
You're welcome. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.